Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope everybody is doing great. Uh, Today, we're going to talk about one of the most commonly tested topics in NACOSCI, which is uh, the dizziness and frequent falling. Here we go. So, for the by the way, you have the notes. If you can go to Narkowski notes under geriatric, you should be able to find the recurrent fall and dizziness. And then you have the notes. And also after the notes, you would be able to see the history taking, consultation, investigation, differential diagnosis, and also documentation. How do you do the documentation and prescription? So, but and today I'm just going to focus more on how to structure uh, a station if you have a patient with dizziness and frequent fall. So usually it happens in elderly. That's why it's part of the geriatric. For this, you guys have my screen, right? You should have. So if you don't, please let me know. So for the recurrent falls, I made a mnemonic to make it very easy for you guys to remember. It is Dr. Jola Falls. So if you have this structure and you go inside the station and apply this structure, you should be on the safe side. And you will definitely pass the Nakoski with a good score. So D stands for details of the fall. By details of the fall, you need to ask when did it happen, where did it happen, what happened, was there any witness? So this is the details of the fall. D for details. When did it happen? Where did it happen? What happened? Did you fall down? Like what was the feeling before, or you didn't feel anything, you just fall down, right? Or was there any wetness? And then R. So D is doctor, D is detail, and R is red flags. So we need to know about the red flags. Head strike, anticoagulants, neurodeficit or new neurodeficit, chest pain, dyspnea, seizure, activity. If the patient had any head trauma, so most likely the patient had some sort of bleeding and trauma, that is the reason for the falls. If the patient is taking anticoagulants, probably the patient has intracranial hemorrhage or neurodeficit, chest pain. For example, in this case, the patient may have some sort of cardiac involvement, dyspnea, seizure activity. So these are the red flags that you need to cover. Again, for each station, if you don't cover the red flag, you lose a lot of mark. So that's something that you need to consider to have it in your list. And now, Dr. Jala, J. J stands for just before the accident, just before the fall. What happened? Lightheadedness, palpitation, visual changes, vertigo, aura. So, because these things will help us to at least know what kind of or what was the reason for the fall, right? For example, if it was aura, if it was vertigo, if it was palpitation, if it was visual change, if it was lightheadedness, based on that, I can tell that this might be the reason for the fall. Not 100%, but at least I would suspect. For instance, out of all of them, palpitation. So probably it could be an arrhythmia. It could be some sort of cardiac involvement that caused the falls or syncope, or it could be aortic stenosis, something like that. At least it kind of point toward to the culprit organ. A stands for after effect. What happened after the fall? Were you confused? Was there any incontinence, tongue bite, injuries? How long to recover? So these things will help me to understand, was it a seizure or was it just a syncope? It wasn't a seizure. L stands for loss of consciousness, duration, and complete versus partial or recall. Did you have loss of consciousness, or while you fall down you had still consciousness, and you knew during the fall that things were happening? So did you completely lose a consciousness, or you were partially awake, and when you woke up were you confused, or you could recall everything? Another L, last similar event. Now we in this case we want to know if it was the first time, or it was the first episode, or it is something that has happened before. First versus recurrent. And A, activity and age. Activity at the time, what were you doing? Footwear, what kind of footwear you had? Are you using some sort of cane, walker, any vision or hearing aids? Because this will help me to map up my approach while I'm doing the consultation. Because if my patient has vision issue, obviously I have to refer him to eye specialist. If my patient has hearing issues or hearing aid, that might have some issue with the aid, so that I have to refer him to the specialist again to take a look at the aids. Probably there is something wrong with that. And footwear, and what was the patient doing? If the patient was walking with a walker or cane, in this case I have to assign someone that who can help her or him while he is at home, how to use the stairs, how to use, for example, the walker properly, and also how to stage the whole area while he's walking. For example, if there's a loose or pointy things, they have to remove it, because if the patient is using walker, so the chances of falls is still high, and if the fall happen, the patient should not die. So we have to make sure that we remove all the sharp stuff from the house or the room. Home hazards, same thing: stairs, racks, pool lighting, pets, bathroom setup. So basically, again, if there is stairs, what we can do uh, to make it safe for him. If the rugs or the loose, if they're loose, we have to make sure that we get rid of them altogether, or make sure that they are not loose anymore. If the room is not light enough, we have to make sure that the patient, while he is at home, the lights are on and it's completely light up, so that he can see properly, and so on and so forth. And F is functional status, activity of daily living, gaze, balance, limits, fear of falling. And A, alcohol or substance use. If the patient is using alcohol, benzodiazepines, sleep meds, and cannabis. Why? Because they are mostly the triggers and the cause for the falls. And if the patient is using any sort of like substance, then you have to make sure that you refer to specialists to uh, take care of the substance abuse disorder. Or alcohol, he has to go through the alcohol quitting process. L, list of medication. This is very important. Please do not forget. Usually the IMGs, when they are taking history from the frequent fall or dizziness, they usually forget about the medication. And that's the most important part of the dizziness and falls, especially in elderly. One of the most common reason uh, that you need to know in MCQ1, and it could be a question: what is the reason for the falls? It could be polypharmacy. It means so many medication at the same time. I'm pretty sure everybody knows, and we all have an elderly in our household, that they probably are around 10 or 11 medication: antihypertensive, antidepressant, for example, sleep, for cholesterol. They have for example, for kidney, for this and that. So in total, they might have around 10 or 11 kind of medications. So this polypharmacy itself is a reason for the recurrent fall. Um, that in this case, you need to refer it to the family physician. You cannot, if you're not a family physician, you're not allowed to change anything. You need to refer it to family physician. Then family physician is the one who decides to get rid of some of the unnecessary medication to decrease the numbers. So the research has shown that if you are on too many medication at the same time, regardless of the type of medication, that could be a reason, but they don't actually know why it caused the falls, but the polypharmacy altogether is one of the major reasons. And again, if you are 100% sure, or this is your primary or impression that this is the diagnosis, polypharmacy, then refer it to the family physician. The family physician will decide which medication should be taken out of the list. And also, not only the numbers, the type of medication is important too. Like we all know that once we get older, the sleep duration will decrease. So most of the elderlies, they will be on sleeping pills. And sleeping pills itself causes the falling and dizziness. So we need to make sure that we ask the right question and we cover all essential question about the medication. Like what kind of medication are you using? Has there been any new medication added on the list of the medication that you were on before? Any changes in the medication recently? And what are the numbers? Is it like 10, 12, 15 medication altogether? So long-term condition, diabetes mellitus neuropathy could be another reason for it. So we have to make sure that we need to ask that, Parkinsonism, and last but not least, and also stroke, TIA, heart disease, osteoporosis. Last but not least, social support and living situation. We need to ask about this, alone versus family, caregiver, community, resources. Why? Because if the patient who has recurrent fall and he is living by himself, we need to make sure that we put him in the nursing home. At least there is somebody who can look after this patient. So this is the structure altogether if you want to cover a fall, dizziness and fall or recurrent fall in elderly. So again, you can find the notes and the cases under NAC OSCE.